Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this evening's event titled Introduction to Bid Writing. Just to let everybody know that you're aware that we're recording this event, but may I just ask you to kindly remain on mute throughout the event to allow our guest speaker, Nosha Desai, to be heard. I'm going to ask that if you have any questions for our speaker, to kindly write them in the chat section, and I will gladly share them with him. Please don't rush off after this presentation, because we've got some interesting information that we'd also like to share with you afterwards. If you're here for the first time, welcome. And just to say that Brent Council engaged Brandwin Business Support Services Limited, of which Nauza is the managing director. You heard his voice earlier. And I'm one of the advisors, and so is our guest speaker, Nosha. The program, which is quite timely, will enable and strengthen the community leadership through building capacity, support the Black community through a program to strengthen procurement opportunities, and provide support for employment and enterprise. If you get involved in this program, as a business, we at Brandwin will assist you to adapt and innovate business models to suit the needs of your business. We've delved into and researched the best ways to communicate the changes on how we currently conduct business. We assist you as business owners to change your approach when submitting bids. We have encouraged businesses to adapt a more compelling approach in the way that they do business, whether online or face-to-face. It's about helping you. It's about helping you to stand out from the crowd. Having a more positive yet confident approach is what is needed. So we will share good practices via webinars and through the one-to-one sessions in the coming months. So if you're interested, I'll put my details in the chat section, and I'll send you an email tomorrow. So now we have the opportunity to hear from another experienced Brandwin advisor who's worked on a number of business support programs, just like this one in the last couple of years. It is my pleasure to introduce Nosha Desai, our Bids and Tenders Specialist Advisor. Over to you, Nosha. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elsa, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this first of two webinars, which are all designed to help you improve your tendering and bidding skills. So just to re-emphasize what Elsa said, if you can keep yourselves on mute with your cameras turned off, that'll help with the bandwidth. If you have got any questions, pop them into the chat. Elsa will be keeping an eye on that, and we'll come to those at the end. Oh, good start. The technology works. Excellent. So let me just tell you in a minute or so my sort of 40 years of background experience. So 30 years of which was in banking for my sins. I would, of course, say that I was one of the good guys, because I was. But on a serious note, a lot of that involved getting and preparing very large, complex tender responses, both for international banks and also when I headed up the government team for Lloyds, where we were bidding and responding to renewals and new tenders for public sector, local authorities and central government departments. As Elsa said, I've worked on a number of these programs over the last couple of years, in particular the Fit to Bid Hounslow program, which was very similar to this in terms of helping local SMEs improve their bidding and tendering skills. I've been an advisor with Brandwin for a couple of years, and I also mentor locally in my location in Harrow and at the British Library. And I've also got a small social care business as well. So that's 40 years summarised into a minute. How time flies when you have fun. Okay, so on to the programme. What's it all about? It's quite comprehensive, quite simply, what we're going to look at this evening. We'll talk about how you engage with procurement departments. Often you'll be dealing with a procurement department with larger contracts as opposed to the direct end user. So I'll talk a little bit about that. There's an online bid capability assessment questionnaire, which if you haven't completed yet, I would encourage you to do so. It will take you less than 5 minutes, and it allows us to provide you with an assessment of where you are in terms of your experience with tendering. I'll show you how to improve your bidding skills, and all that comes through the sales process, which I'll also talk about. And then finally, for I think up to 30 businesses in the Brent borough, there are one-to-one confidential advice sessions with a specialist advisor, which I believe is Elsa. So take advantage of those. So let me tell you a little bit about the program. It's more than just a couple of webinars. Essentially, we're going to have a look and assess your bid writing skills, as I mentioned. And what I'll do is I'll share with you knowledge, skills, and best practice standards across bidding and tendering so that you've got, and you're in a better position to win more business. You've got that access to a one-to-one, 1 hour session with Elsa, and we'll help you get to a point where you can submit what are called expressions of interest, which shows that you're interested in bidding for certain contracts. We'll look at how you write and submit winning bids. We'll do a wider assessment of your business model. What's your value proposition? And there'll be constant engagement throughout the program with regular and ongoing feedback. So there's quite a lot of benefits for businesses in the Borough of Brent. So please do take advantage of those as much as you can. It's all fully funded, as you probably know. So here's the first question for you. Would you bid for something like that? I'm sure you recognise the photo. It's Wembley Stadium, in case you don't. And the point I'm making there is you might think perhaps as a smaller business that you couldn't bid for a contract or to be involved in a contract like Wembley Stadium. But the point I'd like to make for you is that actually, with the right systems, with the right processes and procedures and the right preparation, there's no reason why you can't get involved in larger tender bids. It's a very similar process regardless of the size of contract. And these larger contracts can be quite lucrative and they can make quite a significant difference to you and your business. So just think about that. Don't be put off necessarily by the size of the contract. So there's a couple of workshops that I'm going to be running on tendering and bidding. And the key word is interactive. It's 5:30 in the evening. You probably all had long days. The sun has been shining. That's great. But I want to keep this high energy as much as I can do that on Zoom. And also, it's going to be an interactive session. It's not going to be me just talking for an hour. I can do that, but you'll probably learn more by getting involved in some of the exercises. I can't check up on you because I'm sitting behind my computer, but I would ask you all to commit to take one action as a result of what you hear today. Because if you do that, you'll move your business forward in terms of getting better at tendering and bidding. Like it says, all the things I'll talk to you about this evening are all around sharing best practice processes. And it's all about excellence in selling. And what I say by that is sometimes businesses think that the bidding process is an administrative one, an administrative task where you fill in some forms, but it's not. You're there to sell yourself, your business, and if you treat it as an administrative exercise, you're more likely to be on the way to writing a bid that will not succeed. There are a number of objectives that we'll cover during both this and the second session I'll be running in a couple of weeks' time. We'll look at why organisations go out to tender, what they're looking for in a supplier. We'll talk about getting the basics right, which if you don't do, you'll immediately preclude yourself from getting to the next stage of the process. And then I'll spend some time looking at and going through with you what I call the golden rules and how and what makes a successful winning bid. And that'll be everything from understanding the questions and objectives of the client, making sure you provide solutions with benefits and you clearly articulated the value and how you evidence that. What sort of research you can do on the client or the prospective client in advance, and putting that all together, how to write a clear, bespoke and compelling bid, which will have you on the road to providing and submitting a winning tender response. So quite a lot to get through, so I'll get going. When I say I'll get going, you can get going on the first thing. So the first thing I'd just like you to do for me is just either pop in the chat if you can, your experience in tendering. So if you've never tendered before, just pop a 1 in the chat. If you've completed some tenders, a 2. And if you regularly submit tenders and bids responses, please pop a 3 in there. And if it is 2 or 3, what's your level of success? So I'm going to give you just 30 seconds to do that. And then I'm going to ask Elsa just to give me a bit of feedback in terms of the experience of tendering within the room, because that'll be useful for me in terms of where I pitch this. And there's no right or wrong. If you've never tendered before, that's fine. You'll learn lots, hopefully. And if you're an experienced tenderer, you'll get some tips and techniques which hopefully will help you improve your tender responses. So I'll give you 30 seconds just to do that.
Nosha, most people are actually saying they're a 1 at the moment.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. So has everyone had a chance to pop something into the chat? Do we have any 2s or 3s?
Still at a 1.
That's okay. There's no problem at all on that. So that's helpful. Thank you for doing that, and that proves the chat facility does work, as does Elsa's responses to me. So fantastic. So let's look at the reason and think about why companies go out to tender. Because, you know, it takes a lot of time and effort for both you as a supplier potentially and the company. So why do companies put themselves through it? Think about that and try to put yourself in the mind of the buyer. Because if you can start to do that, if you can start to understand what is important to them as a client, you're going to be in a much stronger position for writing a compelling and winning bid. So I'm going to give you a minute on this one to write down some of the reasons in chat, or if you're old-fashioned, you can pop it down like me, a bit of paper, why companies go out to tender and what you think they're looking for in a provider. So I'll give you a minute or so just to do that. I did tell you have to do some work, but I tend to find if you actually do something and write things down, it's much more likely you'll learn and you'll remember it. So there is a reason behind me getting you to do a bit of work. So I hope you'll come with me on that journey. I hope you're popping something down on the chat for me.
Nothing at the moment, Nosha.
Nothing at the moment. Come on, people, don't be shy. Don't be shy. I'll give you another 10 or 20 seconds, and then I'll give you some answers. But it'd be really good if you could think for yourselves a little bit and come up with some ideas. But if you can't, don't worry. I'm going to give you a few of the answers in a moment anyway, which I probably shouldn't have told you, because that will stop you doing it yourself.
Gayampur has said value for money, best organisation for the job.
Fantastic. That's all good stuff and all absolutely true. Okay, well, I'm going to carry on and give you a few examples of what they do look for and why. So it enables them to provide a fair and objective comparison, particularly with public sectors and local authorities, because they ask the same questions of every prospective supplier. And certainly with local authorities and public sector companies, often they'll have to go out to tender if the contract value is over a certain size. It helps the client minimize supplier selection risk. That's a bit of a tongue twister, because it allows them to do and compare objectively based on fact and based on the same questions. It ensures that their suppliers are meeting certain legal policy objectives. Now, this is an interesting one. The fourth point talks about a sustainable competitive price. Often companies think that the lowest price wins. But let me tell you now, that's not true. Companies are not necessarily looking for the cheapest option. They're looking at the most value for money. What are they getting in terms of return on their investment? And all that forms part of what is known as the evaluation process, when the client is evaluating the various tender responses. So they want to see how you perhaps can deliver efficiencies, how you can improve their process. And in particular, if you can demonstrate how you can measure that tangibly, you're going to be getting yourself in a very strong position in terms of your tender response. So that's a few initial answers, and there are a lot more. So let me talk to you a little bit about those. There are a number of other factors that can help you try to get into their thought process, into their mindset. So have you got an innovative mindset? And when I say that, what I mean is, can you come up with ideas and solutions which drive higher value, drive more efficiencies through their organization? Because if you can do that, you're straight away starting to put yourself in a better position than perhaps a standard response, which you might see from perhaps your competitors. They'll want to know that you can actually provide a solution and deliver response? What's your experience? What's your competence in the service that they're looking for? Because they'll be looking for improvement in services. They'll be looking for clear communication. They'll be looking for companies that can collaborate. And also, it's important that they can find a partner that fits them culturally to deliver what it is they need. And what I mean by that is that a supplier that has similar values, similar beliefs, talks a similar language. And if you know that, you can reflect that all back in your tender response. And by doing research, which we'll talk about, you can find out about this sort of thing. They'll often want real-time accurate management information. Like I said, if you can demonstrate how you can measure things, improve processes, save time, you can show them that through management information that is user-friendly. That's going to be fantastic. What do you understand about their longer-term strategy? What do they want, not only now, but potentially 1, 2, 3 years down the line? Have you thought about that? Have you researched that? And how are you going to communicate? Will you take accountability, and can you demonstrate you'll take accountability when things perhaps go wrong? Because things do go wrong. We know things go wrong. I had that in my banking days where I had a complaint from a finance director from a large council in London. Thankfully, we managed to get that resolved. And on the back of that, we managed to get an opportunity to tender for a large part of their business. So things do go wrong, but will you take accountability and sort it out? They're looking for a problem-solving ethic. So what I mean by that is coming up with solutions which perhaps they haven't thought about. And finally, they'll be looking to ensure the satisfaction of the internal customer. What do I mean by that? I talked earlier about procurement departments. So certainly with larger value contracts, there may be a procurement department within that organization who are evaluating and managing the tender process. And they'll be doing that on behalf of the end user within the organization. So as you can see, if you can get inside the mind of the client and understand in more detail why they go out for tender, you're going to be putting yourself in a much, much stronger position. So let's talk about the basics. In a lot of contracts, particularly local authority or government contracts, you've got to get the basics right. And what I mean by that is there are certain forms which you can almost regard as a tick box exercise, but if you don't get it right, you'll immediately rule yourself out of the process. So as part of this basic information, what you're trying to do is just keep yourself within their prospective supplier list. So that's the foundation, and it's how we build on that. There'll often be like a supplier questionnaire. And what that is, it's basic information about your company, perhaps how long you've been in existence. There might be a form of tender. And what that is it's a form which shows you've read all the terms and conditions and you sign that and you send that back, particularly in the public sector. There may be a non-collusion certificate, which is based, again, these are public sector requirements, which essentially demonstrates that you come up with your bid response independently. We'll see all sorts of different terminology. I don't know how familiar all those acronyms are to you, but you might see ITT, which is invitation to tender, RFI, request for information, request for proposal, pre-qualification questionnaire. It can be quite complicated, but essentially you'll get a pack of information. You'll be asked perhaps to provide some financial information on your company, typically maybe 3 years accounts. You'll be asked for references. Again, this all sounds basic, but if you are being asked to provide, as you will, particularly 2 or 3 references, make sure you tell those referees in advance that you've put them down as a reference so they'll be ready for a request from the potential supplier. Have you got the right policies in place? Anything from health and safety to contingency planning to social value. Spend the time getting those policies in place and it'll make your bidding process a lot easier. And finally, there'll typically be a pricing template for you to complete. And the final bit, which is in bold for an obvious reason, and that is make sure you plan and allow sufficient time to do all this, because it can be quite time consuming initially. But all your competitors will be doing all these things. So you've got to get that basic information right. But how do you move from that basic information towards completing a winning bid? Let's talk a little bit about planning. Again, this information comes from my own experience of tendering and bidding, and certainly when I've been working with other companies, what I find is important. So project manage your response. And what I mean by that is make sure you agree targets, timescales, goals, what you need to do. Use an Excel spreadsheet. I'm no technology expert, but in simplest form, just make sure down the vertical axis, you put all the things you need to do within your tender response, and across the top, you've got days, weeks, and you track and make sure you manage that process in a structured way, rather than just trying to get it done as quickly as you can. Think about who's on your bidding team that can help you. Maybe people internally who've got experience of tender writing or bidding, or partners, or contacts that you know. Who are the internal and external stakeholders? And the fifth bullet point is always a good one. Know the deadlines, sounds obvious, and always work to a day before, because I can guarantee you, because I have done as well, you will run out of time. So work to a deadline a day before the one you've got to submit your bid response. And the final thing is, if you've been working on a tender response, and perhaps you're doing that yourself in the main, make sure you get someone other than yourself to proofread your response before it's sent. And that's not just for technical and grammatical errors, which I'm sure there'll be none, but it's also just to make sure that the responses you provided make sense. They fully answered the question, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. So plan your response carefully, and you will get to submitting a much better proposal for the business. So let's look at the principal elements of a winning bid. It needs to be the right price. And when I say the right price, as I said, it's not necessarily the cheapest price. So you need to know your market. You need to know your competition. And this is all supported, the winning bid mentality, by what I like to call golden rules. So make sure you directly answer the question according to the evaluation criteria. I'll talk about evaluation separately in a moment. Demonstrate and show that you've got an understanding of the company's broader needs, of their strategy, as I said, not necessarily what's just happening immediately, but what they're thinking about 1, 2, 3 years down the line. How can you demonstrate that you've got a credible, competent solution, an approach that's going to work, an approach that's efficient, and that the company can have faith in that you can actually deliver? I'll talk more about this in a minute, but make sure you confirm the benefits of your proposal to the client. What's it going to do for them? Not what you can do in your company and how great you are at X, Y, Z. But how's it going to help them? How's it going to improve their process? How's it going to cut costs? How's it going to save time? All these things need to be articulated clearly. And guess what? You need to include some evidence. You can say all these things, but if you don't support it by compelling evidence, then it's not as powerful. It's not as powerful to your story. And finally, what we need to do is write in a way that's lean, as a term, clear and precise. Because like I said, it takes a lot of time and effort for clients to go out to tender. So they'll want something that gives them the information they want in a clear, concise way, which allows them to evaluate it as efficiently as possible. So what we're going to do this afternoon stroke evening is look at the first 2 areas, and the other 4 boxes I will be covering in my second session. So I keep talking about golden rules. These golden rules, they apply to all businesses, all sector, doesn't matter what area you're in. If you follow these fundamental principles, you'll be on your way to submitting a winning bid. So here's something that might sound obvious, but I'll tell you anyway. And that is, excellent bids usually will win contracts. And guess what? Poor bids will usually lose contracts. So again, sounds obvious, but let me talk to you about why poor bids lose and some of the more common errors. It does sound self-evident, but it is surprising. It's surprising how many common errors we see when people are submitting tender responses. So the first one, providing incomplete answers, not reading the information properly. Because basically what the evaluator will do, evaluator being the person checking responses, is they will look at their question, firstly, and then they'll look at your response, and then they'll see how well and how comprehensively you've answered it, and have you provided evidence, and can you demonstrate value, and can you measure it, and all those good things I've been talking about. So make sure you fully understand and respond to the question. We'll do an exercise on that a bit later. Focusing only on your business and not on the customer. I've been talking about getting yourself in the mind of the client. The danger is you talk about features, not benefits. So you talk about what it is you can do, but not how you can help the client. What's the added value? What's the benefit? What's the cost saving, the time saving, the efficiency improvement? You've got to demonstrate that to the client so they can see they're getting value and how. And as I said earlier, also, a lack of hard evidence in terms of claims. If you can evidence what you're saying, it will make your story so much more powerful. And I'll talk much, much more about evidence in the second session. So as you can see, there are a number of common typical errors that companies make. So don't be one of those that trips up. Right, okay, so fundamental question here. What's our plan? When I say our, I mean your. What's your plan for a great winning bid response? The question you should be asking yourselves is why us? Why your company rather than your competitors? What makes you different? What makes you stand out from the rest? So, third exercise. Time for you to have a little think again. Put your thinking caps on. I hope you're with me. Put some stuff in the chat again, if you will. Think about why should a company choose you as a supplier? And then secondly, how can you show evidence that you've got expertise, experience, knowledge in the service required? As I keep saying, put yourself in the mind of the buyer and you'll be much more on the way to submitting winning bids. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds or so to pop something in the chat, so don't be shy. Think about what's different about you and your company that stands you out from your competitors. How can you prove that? How can you evidence it? Just come up with one or two examples if you can. You know your company, so what's different about you? And see the chat commentary going up on my screen. I can't go to it myself because it then freezes my screen, unfortunately. So, Elsa, any nuggets in there?
Yeah, not Fodosa has said records of compliments and reviews to back you up.
Fantastic. That's excellent. Case studies, testimonials, that sort of thing. Absolutely fine. Google reviews, all good stuff.
Still waiting for some more responses.
Come on, people. Don't be shy. I'm hoping you're still with me. If you can't articulate the reasons why people should choose your company, then who can? Who can? I'll give you 10 seconds more. Come on. Someone can put something in there for me. Okay.
Lynette,
yep. Oh, I can see two more rushing in before the deadline. Fantastic. What have we got, Elsa?
Lynette says extensive track record.
Very good.
And Nomathimba says what the company has achieved, including clearly presented evidence to back it up.
Fabulous. Absolutely right.
Pat has said holistic, person-centered, long-term support.
Wow, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, holistic, person-centered, long-term support.
Yeah, I get most of that. That's absolutely fine. So thank you. That's excellent. So here are some reasons from what I see when I'm talking to businesses when they're tendering. Think about, first of all, how well do you know the client? Have you got a relationship? Have you done business with them before? Are there people within your organization who know them? We've talked a lot about evidence. Have you got case studies? Have you got testimonials? Have you got references? Have you got Google reviews? And where can the client find this evidence? Is it on your social media, on your website? Is it on LinkedIn? If you can evidence these case studies and prove how you've done measurable, good, strong work in the area where they're looking for help, you're going to be putting yourself in a strong position. So can you demonstrate that expertise? Can you demonstrate experience in the sector? Have you worked on similar contracts? And if you have, can you demonstrate and show what value you added, how you added it? Was it measurable? And then finally, what's the knowledge and experience of your team? What level of resource have you got behind you as an organization? So as you can see, these are a number of generic reasons why you think a company might choose you as a supplier. But is that enough? Is that enough? That's the question. Well, the thing about that sort of information is all your competitors will be saying and claiming these same things. They're flexible, they provide great customer service, they've got sector knowledge, they've got a track record. You can say anything, but what you need to then do is turn that generic language into a much more focused, value-driven commentary with evidence, and that'll put you in a position for the evaluators to score much more highly. So it's about making it bespoke. So another one of the golden rules I've talked about is basically understanding what you're being asked and the objectives, which are critical to writing a winning bid response. That little diagram is supposed to show you putting yourself in the mind of the buyer, in case you're wondering. So what are the basic objectives when a company is tendering? We need to understand, we need to identify. There'll be some organizational objectives, and that'll be the sort of headline strategic objectives that the project has to deliver. It might be, in this case, increasing the number of local suppliers for the council, for example, or for larger companies. There'll then be some what I call absolute needs of the project that they have to deliver, and perhaps some sub-needs as well. And then the final one, which is a great one, is what added value can you provide? Because that's the opportunity you have to differentiate, to show that you can come up with ideas and solutions that the company perhaps haven't thought about themselves. And that's the sort of thing that can differentiate you from your competition. That's the sort of thing that can make a difference between a bid that's on the edge and a winning bid. It's having that innovative thought process. So if you can identify those sort of things, those sort of objectives and issues, and understand them, really understand them from the client perspective, you're on the way to creating a winning bid. One great question that I was asked when I was presenting to a local authority after we submitted a tender response is, what is it we've not thought about that you would recommend? That's a great question, because basically it's saying, well, you're the expert, Mr. Supplier, so you tell me what else I need to think about. And if you can do that, if you can demonstrate that, you're going to be in a much stronger position to submit a winning bid. So, where can you find information about the client needs? Various number of sources. There are four main areas. They tell us in the invitation to tender. It might be a pre-qualification questionnaire, but there'll typically be a pack of information that the client, the prospective client, will provide you as a supplier, and they'll have lots of information. So read that pack of information carefully, because it will contain lots of useful information, and it should drive our thought process. You can engage with the client, build some sort of relationship, go and talk to them. It's been a bit difficult in the last 2 years due to COVID. It's been a bit harder, but have and build some dialogue with the prospective client. Because you can be sure that if you're not doing that, your competition will be doing that. Build relationships with prospective clients. We can carry out research to increase and improve our understanding. I'll talk more about that in a few moments. And then finally, we can ask and clarify client requirements through the formal question and answer process. So you have the opportunity to ask questions. part of the tender process. Just be careful when you do that, because just remember, when you submit a question, the answer will be shared amongst all the prospective suppliers. So don't give away anything sensitive, don't ask anything sensitive, which will give your competition an edge. Just make sure that you read the question and answers before asking a question, just to make sure that someone hasn't already asked it. Because if you have, they have, you'll look a little bit more unprofessional. So as you can see, there are a number of ways you can get a better understanding of their objectives and needs just by digging a bit deeper and doing more research. So I talked about evaluators and how they score responses. And with questions that they put in their bid, they'll have put them in there for a specific reason. And for you as a prospective supplier, correctly identifying all the elements of the question will make it easier for you to understand and also then structure a competent, complete answer. And if you answer it fully, and you make sure you answer every component part, we're going to do an exercise on that in a minute, it'll give the evaluator a chance to score you more highly. Because if you only answer part of the question, you won't score very highly, and you'll end up with lower scores and consequently potentially a losing bid. So break down the questions. And let's do that now. So another little exercise for us to think about. And this is a question from a real bid. And the question is, how many elements must our answer address? As you can see there, I'll read it quickly, just about see most of it. It says, please provide a high-level description of the structure of the company and the structure of the division or part of the company responsible for delivering the services, including the number of people in each team. Provide a description of the resources expected to deliver the proposed solution. And also describe any other key contracts being delivered in a similar time frame and how any resource conflicts will be managed. So, 3 bullet points, 3 parts of the question, correct? Well, have a little think about that. And as I said, you can either add some answers to chat or you can just jot it down on a bit of paper. But I'll give you 30 seconds to think about how many elements are there within that question, which, as I said, is a real question from a real bid. So 30 seconds to think about that.
We haven't got any answers yet.
You can just put a number, anything from, well, if you think there are 3 elements, then 3. I mean, if you think there are more, feel free to put those in. Anyone got any guesses? There's no embarrassing wrong answers. Well, there are, but I won't embarrass you.
Oh, we've got a 3 and a 6. Which is...
a 3 and a 6. Well, I can tell you it is between 3 and 6. I can see more chat numbers coming up.
The first question has 3 elements. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I think you're getting the hang of this, so let me break it down for you. But thank you for your input on that. Well, basically, whoever said 6, you're right. Because
sorry, the second question has 2.
Very good. That's very good. So in total, from those 3 bullet points, there are actually 6 elements to answer. And I've broken those down at the bottom of the slide. So you can see it's like a high-level description of the structure of the company. Separately, the structure of the division, number of people in each team. I won't read it all out. But you can see that if you read it at first glance and think, well, okay, there are 3 bullet points, 3 elements, and you only answer 3, you're missing half of the response that the company is looking for from you as a potential supplier. So even with for example, point 3, number of people in each team, the answer could be from your side 3. You might put 3. But actually, wouldn't it be better if you have 3 people in your team to just perhaps put a little 1-paragraph bio? And we also recommend, or I also recommend, putting a picture because it makes it more real, a picture of each individual. And do you have support behind those 3 people that can help with the bid? You don't want to provide too much information, but you certainly need to provide enough information to go over and above just giving them the bare minimum. Because you'll see in a moment, that then doesn't allow the evaluator to score your response as highly as you want. So well done for everyone who came up with 6, and I'm sure you can see how those questions are broken down, and the importance of really looking at each element of the question and thoroughly reading and understanding and answering each part of the question. So there are various different evaluation criteria and methods. There are no standard ones, but you can see here essentially that is a sliding scale from 0 to 5. So if, for example, you've basically not really, well, if you haven't answered the question firstly, or you've really just answered it in a very basic fashion, the likelihood is you'll score quite poorly, and possibly 0 or 1. But what we're all aspiring to do, of course, is provide the type of response to allow you to be scored most positively, most highly 5. So a well-defined solution, first of all, linked to clear benefits, which you can articulate, which you can evidence, which you can measure, and you can show how you will add value to that company. So there are a number of different ways to answer a question, but read it carefully and it will give the evaluator a much better chance of scoring you highly. And also what you'll sometimes find in tender invitations is that they'll weight a part of the question. So they might say, for example, 60% of the score will be weighted towards price and 40% towards delivery of the service. So in that case, you know that their price is it's a more important issue to them in terms of their overall scoring criteria. So just look at the weighting as well. Typically it might be 50-50, but there are situations where there's certain weighting which you need to understand when you're responding to put greater emphasis on those higher weighted areas. So give yourself and give your evaluator the best possible chance and evidence to score your response highly. So another exercise for you to think about. I'm working you hard, I know, but you're doing grand, so stay with us. There's lots and lots of information you can find out about your client research. I want you to think here about what are your potential sources of information. So where can you find information about your client? When you're doing your research, what sort of information are you looking for within the client? Because it's important for us to understand the client in detail over and above what they've just provided in their tender invitation. So again, I'll give you 30 seconds to have a little think about that and put something in the chat. Think about where you'll find it and what you need to demonstrate to shine. There are lots and lots of places and there's lots and lots of information. I will tell you about that in a minute. So don't be shy, you're doing well. Keep adding examples to the chat. The more you think, the more you exercise your minds, the more likely you'll remember this.
Okay, we've got the internet, newsletters, etc.
That's fantastic, absolutely both true.
Company's house.
Yes, fantastic, very good. Anyone for any more? Oh, I've seen something go up.
Google.
Google,
And
yeah.
reports, value, mission statements,
Yes.
customers themselves.
Yes. You're clearly getting the hang of this. There's lots and lots of sources, and there's lots and lots of information as well.
And the website. Oops.
Yeah.
Gov,
Yeah.
.gov website also.
Fantastic.
Okay.
I'll crack on there because you're getting the hang of this definitely, which is fabulous. So thank you so much for that. So people talked about the website to start with. That is an excellent starting point because it gives you a whole host of information about what's important to the client, what's going on in their world, what are they proud of, and by doing that research on their website, you can then find information which you can play back. I say play back, I mean include, mention, discuss, acknowledge, choose the word amongst those that you like the most, within your tender response, because it all just demonstrates you've got a better understanding of the client. So the website contains lots of useful information. I'm using Brent Council here as an example, and I'll just show you a little bit more about what you can find on their website. Think about if you've got contacts within prospective client, who's the sort of key decision maker, who are the influencers, who's making the buying decision, what drives their behavior. And in the Brent website, they really help you because they've got whole section on what they're looking for when they're tendering and they're putting business out for procurement. There's lots and lots of stuff. So much so that basically they've even got, at the bottom of the slide, you can see there, a procurement strategy, which you as a prospective supplier, can download. Within that, it talks about what are their key drivers. So it talks about 5 key drivers that Brent Council have when they are looking for suppliers. It talks about building wealth in the community, sustainability, circular economy, which I'll talk a bit more about in a moment. They want to procure in a social, in an ethical fashion. They talk about active procurement, being innovative, being reflective, being proactive. All this information, you might have to dig for it a little bit. It's there for you as a prospective supplier. So that's the document there. And they even have a supplier guide. So the more you know about your client, the better it is. The website's a great starting point. And then LinkedIn. This is our own brand new company LinkedIn page. And again, it'll have information about the business. It'll have information about individuals. It'll have information about sort of companies that we're following, things that are interesting to us, groups we're part of. The more you understand about the client, the better position you'll be in to complete a winning response. And there's a whole host of social media platforms, as I'm sure you know, anything from Facebook to YouTube. You can go on our YouTube channel, for example, as I said at the outset, and you'll have recordings of various different webinars, and you can see the sort of things that we get involved with, and that adds hopefully to our credibility. You can say, wow, they actually know a bit about tendering, or they know a bit about value propositions and how to sort of articulate tenders. So use all these sources in terms of your research, because it's all out there. You just need to find it. So what are the potential sources? We've talked about some of them. Let me just go through a few more that might be useful. There'll be a strategy document, typically. Certainly local authorities will have a strategy document. And it talks about their long, short, and medium-term visions, what their plans are, what have they got views and opinions on, what's important in their market. Certainly, for example, when I'm talking to SMEs at the moment, one of the key issues that a lot of smaller businesses are wrestling with is the working from home balance. You know, how do you get people to be as motivated perhaps at home? Is it different for younger people versus people who are like myself, a bit more mature, where you can work quite happy at home? You know, there are issues and challenges and key things that are going on in everyone's business. So what's important? What are their challenges? What's going on in their market? What's critical to them and their business? And what sort of language they use. When I say language, what sort of phraseology, phrases, terminology? Because if you can get a feel for that, you can reflect that back in your tender response, and you can write back in a way that they will understand more clearly because you're using their language. Like I said earlier, Brent Council, they actually provide a definition of what's a good supplier, what they want from their suppliers. Who are the key people within the organisation? Have there been quotes from the CEO? What's driving them personally? There's a whole host of useful information you can find just by digging a bit more deeply. There are lots and lots and lots of different sources that use them, because the more you know about your prospect client, the better it is. The more you know than your clients, the better it is. All right, so we're nearly there. Actually, time has flown. I've been enjoying myself so much. I hope you have too. Let me talk to you a little bit about the wider program just for a moment, because there are a number of benefits I genuinely believe for businesses in Brent about this program. We're doing the first of 2 bid writing tender webinars today, and I'll be doing a second one in a couple of weeks' time. I hope you will join me on that. There's lots more to learn and lots to tell you about. These webinars, by the way, they're all run by people who've got experience within these different disciplines and sectors. So the tender business model will undertake a wider analysis of your business model. We'll look at your value proposition and what's your USP, and how do you come up with innovative ideas and solutions. we run a session on basically developing and designing products for procurement. Like I said to you, with larger suppliers, often you'll be dealing with a procurement department and not necessarily the end users. So it's useful to understand how these procurement areas work. We've got a webinar on LinkedIn, and that's really all about improving your marketing presence using LinkedIn. I don't know how many of you use it, but you know, for example, I've got a LinkedIn profile. I've got lots of contacts. I do use it to a point, but I probably don't use it as effectively as I should to generate new contacts, to get more leads, to improve my brand, my reputation, my sort of marketing. So we've got a LinkedIn specialist who will help you make the most out of LinkedIn. And the final one we talk about is the circular economy and developing key partnerships. This is something that I'm learning about. It's a key approach for SMEs now. It's a system tackling things like global challenges, climate change, waste, pollution, sustainability, recycling, and it's how to better use and manage resources. So I think that's one that Nauza himself will be doing, and it also helps you develop helps you with some ideas of how to develop key partnerships to get yourself involved in that. So the program has a lot of very useful webinars from specialists. They're all free. So, you know, we'll be sending out the links next week. Please do get yourself signed up and onto those, because you will learn a lot and it will help you in your overall business moving it forward. So you'll be pleased, 6:25, you'll be pleased to know that I'm coming to a conclusion. So I just want to talk to you very briefly about one-to-one sessions. And as I said, I'm pretty sure these are with Elsa. Elsa's like myself, she's experienced business advisor. And the one-to-ones are confidential and bespoke to you in your business. And the other thing that are very good about them is they're action focused. So they'll help you get in a better place, in a better position to bid and tender for contracts. Not necessarily Wembley Stadium or huge council contracts, although that's certainly possible, but just larger business contracts, or just perhaps your first tender. They'll help you get an understanding of where are these advertised, what sort of business is out there. You know, where do Brent Council, for example, advertise what they spend? Now, Brent Council, they spend something like, I think, 240 million a year, and their top three sectors are the corporate sector, regeneration, growth, and adult care. If you know all these things and you're a sort of business providing services in those areas, you'll be in a strong position to bid. I talked about your value proposition, developing a strong business model, getting the basics right for completing tenders, and getting you in a position where you can submit a winning tender response. So thank you for bearing with me. We've just about come to the conclusion. There's been a lot of information there, but as Nauza said, we will be putting a recording of this up on our YouTube channel. So feel free to revisit it. I did ask you at the start to make a commitment to do and take some action. So if you feel happy enough to share that in the chat, please do so. And I will be looking forward to seeing you all again, hopefully in a couple of weeks' time, when I will continue showing you how to improve and learn to submit winning bids and improve tender responses. Okay, I'm talked out for the minute, so I'm going to hand back to Elsa. If there are any questions, we're going to be here for a few minutes. And thanks for participating. I can see on my chat screen there were 53 messages, so as I said, I couldn't read them because it just blows up my screen. We couldn't get past that. But anyway, Elsa, thank you for your support on that. And now back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Nauza. Sorry. I just want to say what Pat and Pamela are saying in the chat. Thank you so much. This is from Pat. Thank you so much. Fabulous presentation. Learned a lot. Sharing the slides. And then Pamela asks, thank you very much. Appreciated.
My pleasure. My pleasure. As I say, take some action. Take one piece of action.
Yeah, I think whilst we're swapping over the controls at the moment, I just want to, first of all, thank everyone who's actually been got involved with the program already and who's actually had one-to-one sessions. So I'm going to, first of all, ask you, is there anybody with any questions at this moment over to Finosha based on his presentations? Because no one's saying anything else.
Stunned silence.
That means you've done a good job, Nosha. That means you're
or they're asleep. Hopefully not that. Hopefully not the latter.
No, they're not asleep because they were interacting during the
Yes, sir, I'm just going to allow everybody to talk now. So hand over the floor to you for your community engagement. Okay, thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. I think I also want to just, okay, let's see everybody that's in the room. Great. Oh, I can see that Colleen finally got in, which is fantastic.
Yes, I did.
Excellent. And I do want to just have a couple of announcements, and then I'm going to introduce Lorna, who will then take over the sessions. So Nosha, thanks very much for comprehensive presentation.
Pleasure.
Thank you. If anyone's interested in acquiring digital skills or require more information registration, please visit the Brent Council website. Okay. As I said, there's a number of you that are currently on the chat that I'd like to, I think Lorna would like to also get you involved, but I'd like to do that also based on the one-to-ones. So I'll ask you a few questions in the moment. Okay. There are grants available in relation to what we're doing in Brent. But before I go over to the grants, let me just open it up and just ask those that have had one-to-ones so far, if you'd like to share your experiences, because there's a few that have not had one-to-ones, and I'd love to have a one-to-one with all of you. So unless anybody comes forward, I will pick on you. Karen. Karen, would you like to say a few words? I can see Sybil's also on the call, the webinar. Okay. No matter, I can never say, please forgive me the pronunciation. No Mathemba?
No Mathemba.
H is silent. You hear me?
Yes, we can. Just, would you like to share something based on your one-to-one session?
Yes, I found honestly the one-to-one session very, very useful. I would like to continue maybe with the one-to-one personally, because I think it will help me to move away from what has been rather stagnant to where I would like to be. So, my one-to-one with you, Elsa, was something that I'm still living on.
Okay.
And I'm still going to be completing my business canvas.
Okay, business.
That's got to be done.
Yeah.
And I'll share that with you when I've completed it.
Okay.
Because I would like really to get more advice and be pointed in the right direction. I really enjoyed the one-to-one. I'll recommend it to anyone. Please have the one-to-one with Elsa. You won't regret it.
Thanks
Okay.
very much.
Thank you very much. Elsa, can you hand over to Lorna now, please?
I am about to do that now.
Thank you very much.
Would you like to take the stage? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I've put my camera on as I sit here in the office. I love the way that every business network I get put on the spot with no prior warning. I get invited to take the microphone and say a few words. So I'm a little bit unprepared, so you'll have to forgive me, everyone. What it really would be good for me to know is, based upon tonight's session on bid writing, on understanding the organisations that you're bidding to and doing the background research to really bring together a strong and informed response, are any of you in the process of making bids, thinking about it? Anybody seen any contracts and tenders that they're working towards making a submission to? So my question is to you really, rather than me giving you information about what's going on in my world. Anybody got any bids on the table that you're preparing to submit? No? Okay, another question. Will tonight help you? Or is that a comment in the chat?
Yeah, I think that's from one of the clients that I met from Skill Care. She's preparing for a bid.
Okay, do you want to share with us? Tell us what you're preparing for.
Yes, can you hear me? Okay.
We can. Hi.
Hi, hello. Happy International Women's Day to everyone, by the way.
Good starting point. Well said.
Right, so we put in for a bid last year. We were unsuccessful, but they made another lot available, which they've informed us of, and they've asked if we would prepare the bid again. We didn't score. We were just kind of like a few points off from moving forward. So we had a one-on-one session with a bid writer, and they helped us. And I've also had a one-on-one with Elsa, which was really, really informative, just like tonight's talk as well has been brilliant. It's just because we also have been stagnant for a little while with the epidemic, with the pandemic, sorry. So it just gives us a broader vision of how to approach our bid writing and how to structure our company as well. So it's really, really been helpful for us.
That's excellent news. Thank you very much for sharing that. Anybody else? I can see there's another hand up, or is that a comment in the chat? No, that's just a comment in the chat. Anybody else preparing or responding to? Nomatemba, do unmute yourself. Can you unmute everyone, please?
I never thought that I would ever, get to respond to a bid, but after listening to the presentation today, it's given me a lot of courage, a lot of information, and that yes, I can do it as long as I stick to the principles of what's been presented this evening. So whereas before I would have had to go to somebody else to write the bid, I've got enough courage now, and hopefully after the next session, I should be able to respond to a bid.
Excellent, Nomatemba. Yeah. Excellent. And what's the nature of the bids, or the bids that you'd like to go for?
Bids that I'd like to go for is the ones in training. I would also like to go for bids with, social care.
Oh, okay. So that's what you do, social care training?
Yes, because my background is in nursing and worked in hospitals in management, and I was a registered manager for a well-known social care company. So I've got quite a lot of experience.
I might need to talk to you, Nomatemba.
Point here, please, Lorna, is that I've just been told by our senior director at Brent Council that the home care tender, the £2 million home care tender, which couldn't happen last year for several reasons, is likely to be issued after the elections, so either in June or in September. So watch the space, and we are here to help you.
I think that would be really helpful. I know we've talked about Contract Finder, and my colleague Rajesh shared about, the London Tender Portal, where all of our active contracts are uploaded. I think, Nazir, if you come across tenders, particularly the local social care contract, please let's make sure that we share it to members of this network. I guess as an aside, and I know this network is all about business and enterprise, I do happen to be looking for a learning and development coordinator. It's a part-time, 4 days a week role through a recruitment agency. I haven't been able to fill the role permanently. Nomatemba, if you've got any interest in learning and development for our adult social care and children's safeguarding board, I'm happy to have a separate conversation with yourself or anybody else who thinks they might be able to fulfill that role. And it is about sharing the learning and disseminating good practice from safeguarding cases, incidents, reviews across the borough.
Yes,
so you would? Great stuff. I'll email you separately and we can talk about that.
Thank you.
Okay, so more broadly on the business front, how is business at the moment? And we all know the world's in crisis, horrors taking place in Europe. Are we seeing any impact, or are we predicting any impact on your existing businesses? I'm going to pick on somebody. There's somebody new on the call, and I'm going to go for, bear with me, things keep popping in front of my screen. I am going to invite Fidosa. Any comments from yourself on how business is going at the moment? No comments from Fidosa.
Just to let you know, Lorna, everybody's unmuted, so.
Okay, who wants to talk? Anybody feeling any immediate impact on their business? Cost of travel. Leonora, do you want to talk to that? You've muted everyone again. Nazir, can we unmute?
No. Hello, everyone. Good evening.
Hi, Leonora.
Yes. Basically, we have a care agency, a domiciliary care agency, and the carers have been complaining about lately traffic to work. And again, based on what we've seen, they're talking about their cost of living, that the bills are going up. And just this afternoon, we had a meeting with the management team that we have to look into, even though the council will not increase our hourly rates, but we have to look for a way of increasing their hourly rate so that would help them a bit. Otherwise, a lot of them will pull out from working as dom care staff. So that's one big, huge impact that is going to have on us, because already we're struggling to get more carers. But at the rate at which things are going up, I don't know how we're going to survive.
So Leonora, I can see immediate support for that comment from Skill Care, cost of travel for staff. So that is the kind of energy fuel crisis is impacting on your employees, your staff, which will in turn impact on your ability to carry on.
Yes, definitely.
Any comments from you on that, Skill Care?
Yeah, I mean, I second that as well. The impact of saying we work primarily in Brent, and for the road closures from creating the bus lanes, that's had an impact as well on us. Also, just staffing it's been very difficult. Staff have the choice whether to work in the supermarket or work in social care. They're going to choose a supermarket. And we've approached this with the last meeting we had with the commissioners. And it's something that they're looking at. They might do an uplift, but I don't think it's going to really meet the cost. So again, we're struggling. We've just taken on our certificate of sponsorship, and that's made a little bit of a difference. But still, it's too slow. It's almost like too little, too late, really.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I'm going to turn to Noshir. Noshir, is your business feeling any particular impact at the moment? Oh, sorry, Noshir, you're a speaker. Apologies.
I'm a speaker. I was just going to say.
Apologies. So I'm going to go to Pamela. Hi, Pamela. Pamela's muted.
She's been unmuted. She's muted it herself. She has to unmute herself. Please unmute yourself, Pamela.
Okay, or I can turn to somebody else. Michael, how about yourself? What are you having any local impacts? No, nobody's talking to me tonight. We're having a quiet night. How about you, Colleen? Hi.
Hi. Yeah, sorry. my business is very small at the moment, so I'm just going along, just me and my daughter, do a catering business, and it's just really very, very small. So I won't say I'm feeling anything as yet, because it's as when I can cook.
Okay, so I guess for you it's about supply chain, making sure that the
Yeah.
food supply isn't disrupted, because we know it's going to hit in certain places, like sunflower oil and flour, I hear, are going to be the hard-hitting areas of our food supply. Have you got plenty of stocks in, Colleen?
Not really. I don't have the finance to do that.
Okay, so we need to think about how we can promote your food business. What do you cook?
Jamaican food.
Okay, so
like
we do
chicken, fried chicken, all that stuff.
Stop it, you're making me hungry. I'm not staying at home tonight. I'm staying in a hotel in Wembley and thinking, what can Deliveroo bring to me? I should give you a call separately, and then I can eat tonight. Colleen, we do sometimes have catering at our own meetings. So if I have a big all afternoon meeting. Pardon?
Yeah, I've actually done a catering for Brent a few years back in by 40 Avenue there in the Patifa, I think they call it. I did a catering for Brent in there once.
Okay, so we in fact, I say sometimes, I regularly use an external caterer to support my meetings. So again, stay in touch and we'll see how we can do some little things to perhaps support you in terms of what we buy in for our own meetings that we control. So there's another link and connection for tonight. And I have no doubt that more links and connections will be made as long as you all keep speaking. So talk to me, somebody. There's somebody on the line called Karen. Karen, any comments from you on how your business is going at the moment? No, well, I know who will talk to me tonight. My old friend Pat Fernandez is on the call. Hello, Pat.
Hello.
Good evening to you.
Oh, you caught me by surprise there.
Oh, you shouldn't be surprised. You must have known I was coming for you. Pat, I know your sector is slightly different, as in you're in the advice sector, but in terms of the organisation as a business, how is it going?
Well, business is booming for us, absolutely booming. And unfortunately, it's the kind of sector where I wish it wasn't really, because it means there's a lot of people out there with need, and that need is only going to get exacerbated and going to escalate. So we're doing a lot of work. You know, our sort of remit is twofold, really. It's kind of working directly with the public and trying to help them with their needs, but also trying to upskill other organisations so they're in a position to increase accessibility to whatever level they find it possible. You know, it might not be their first remit giving frontline advice, but at least being able to signpost and refer accordingly. So, you know, the whole sort of Ukrainian conflict, will that affect us? Well, you know, we're fortunate in that we can work from home and we can deliver our services entirely from home if we need to. But I don't know, I'm guessing that's something that, you know, as it filters through and we have, you know, another unfortunate raft of refugees coming through, that they will need support. You know, I mean, we've got people that are coming over that are supposed to be related to extended family. I pray to God that we kind of widen our policies and let more people in, because there's such a tremendous need. But when those people are come, and we've all seen the news, it's terrible, they're coming with absolutely nothing. And while that may not affect us immediately now, it will affect us without doubt further down the line.
I think you're absolutely right there, Pat, and it's an odd industry to be booming, but just to use Pat's phrase that business is booming, is anybody else doing really well at the moment? There's lots of you on the call. Do talk to me. Skill care. Do share.
So we've been consistent where we take on packages. We are a spot provider and we have a private client base also as well. But it's been consistent and steady as well. Probably some of the more difficult packages they will tend to place with us, and double-handed packages as well that we take on. So it has, even though we have the challenges with increased fuel costs and the cost of living, we still have a really loyal base of employees who have been with us for like 7-8 years and continue to, like, they would have gone away for a year and they'll come back to us. So that has been really good and consistent, and the work has been very steady and consistent as well, even through the pandemic.
It's really good to hear, skill care. Thank you for that. As we're approaching 10 to 7, Elsa mentioned talking to you about grants. And in applying for grants, that a certain amount of preparedness is required, in the same way you would prepare and do your homework on your supplier. That applies the same for grants. So Elsa, do you want to say a few words about current grants that are available?
Thank you, Lorna. Yeah, I'm just getting ready. Thank you. Yeah, thanks very much for the opportunity. Yeah, in Brent, we've got quite a selection, like Love Where You Live, up to £1,000 in grants. We've got the Neighbourhood Infrastructure Levy Fund, up to 50,000. We've got You Decide programme, which is carbon offset fund and part of the NCIL programs, where local residents are part of the decision-making process. And these funding parts actually vary in relation to size, but as it says, the local residents actually make the decision. We've got—
So Elsa, I'm smiling now because I didn't realise that you were going to talk about those grants. So all of those grants sit under me, so they're my service.
Yeah, sorry.
So let me give a bit of context. So if you don't mind, Elsa, I'll just whiz through some of them.
Yeah,
Love Where You Live is focused on delivering community projects. An individual or an organisation can apply for a Love Where You Live grant. You can apply for up to £1,000, very easy application. What is important there is that you demonstrate how the community supports your project. It can be a one-off project, it can be something really small. And if I go back to, who did I speak to? It was Leonora, wasn't it? Was it Leonora that's doing the catering?
No, we do the dom care.
Oh, you do the dom care. And
yes.
Who did I speak to that does the, sorry?
Colleen does.
Colleen. So Colleen, catering. You might say, where I live, there's a community centre, and I want to cook for Easter weekend. I want to teach people how to make bun and cheese, right? A nice traditional Jamaican Easter celebration. You can apply to Love Where You Live for a grant to pay for the rent for the community centre, to buy the ingredients to cook the bun and cheese, to promote it. I'm going to produce 100 flyers, and I'm going to get this demonstration and get people cooking, get people talking. That would be a lovely little project for Love Where You Live that would fund you as an individual £1,000 to deliver that project. Now, Elsa mentioned another fund, the Carbon Offset Fund. That's closed now. We have just distributed £500,000. 400,000 went to improve homes and buildings to reduce the carbon emissions in the borough. 100,000 went to provide education on in the borough on awareness raising around how to reduce carbon. The next big grant that is coming up opens up in about 2 weeks' time. It is the Neighbourhood Community Infrastructure Levy. We call it NSIL. That is a grant that is linked to what contributions developers pay. So, you know, in Wembley, we've got lots and lots of new buildings. Those developers make a contribution to the council to kind of offset the impact of bringing in lots and lots of new people into the borough. Some of that money is spent on big things like a new doctor's surgery or a new primary school, but some of that money has to be spent locally in the community for the community. So that's the bit that we're talking about, is the community element of the infrastructure levy. So it opens in about 2 weeks' time, and it is not going to follow a traditional grant making process. So in a traditional grant making process, you get the form, you go do your research, and you say all the lovely things that you think the commissioner wants to hear. And then an officer, somebody like me, in the council, in the civic centre, reads the bid, determines, I like that one can have the money. I don't like that one's not getting the money. But that's an officer making a decision. We're not going to do that this time round. What we are doing is a system that's called participatory budgeting, whereby we invite the community to make the decision on who is allocated the funding. And what you will do is you fill in what is basically a really short expression of interest that says, this is who I am, this is what I want to do, this is who my project is for, and this is why I think it's needed in the community. Now, businesses can apply for the Neighbourhood Community Infrastructure Grant as long as 100% of the money goes on delivering the project. It doesn't stop you paying fees. So if it's yourself, if you're going to do some level of tuition, if you're running, I don't know, a hair and makeup business, if you're going to do some tuition, you can allocate funding to pay yourself. But the bulk of that money must be to deliver for the community. It cannot be to buy goods and equipment for your business. So you can't buy a photocopier with it. You couldn't use it to pay the rent on a shop or the rent on a warehouse. It's got to be to deliver the project to the community. So what happens is you put in your expression of interest. There will be a series of information events, a bit like meetings like this, and some of them will be in person in different places in the borough. And we will support you to prepare to present your project to the community. So there will be 5 decision day events, one in each of the Brent Connects areas. So we've got 5 different localities in the borough. We call them Brent Connects areas. There will be an in-person, face-to-face event whereby lots and lots of local residents will attend. You will present your project to the community to say, this is who I am, this is what I want to do, and this is going to be the benefit for the local area. The community will listen to quite a few projects. So depending on how many applications come forward, there might be 20, there might be 10, there might be 15. The community will vote on the projects that they want to see delivered in their local area. So in that, it is local people deciding on who will get the grant. So that is the next NSIL round. It opens quite soon, but the decision days will take place in June. Okay, so that's when you've got to be around. So don't be on holiday or be away on a business trip. You need to be around in June to present your projects in person to the community for the community to vote on the projects that they want. So that's the NSIL grant. I'm happy to take questions in a minute, and there's just one final grant I wanted to speak about. It's called Together Towards Zero. It is a local grant that has been established to perhaps get us thinking about climate change, things that are going to educate communities around climate awareness. It might be a gardening project, a growing project. As long as it is focused on community, you can apply for up to £1,000 for Together Towards Zero. The only other grant that we run is called the Edward Harvest Fund. It's a charitable kind of legacy that we receive each year that we distribute across the community, but you have to be a registered charity to benefit from that grant. So I'll be light touch about that one, but happy to take any questions on any of our grants. No questions for me tonight.
We have a couple of more minutes, so if you want to say anything, Lorna, and to wrap up, it'll be great, please.
Does anybody want to ask me any questions about the grants? No? Okay, in which case we've only got 2 minutes left. I think, Elsa, I'll pass over to you to close down for tonight.
Thanks very much, Lorna, and thanks very much for actually explaining the grants in detail. Okay, so it just leaves me to say thanks for Noshir for actually also sharing his expertise this evening, and also you as business owners for coming here this evening. So thanks, Noshir. It was really informative, and I know the business has got a lot from it. Don't forget the one-to-ones, because the one-to-one sessions will actually help you to take the next step, and also introduce you to the Brent grants, because I've got a council officer's name that I'm able to direct you to as well. So it's good night from all of us. But our next event, not to forget, is the 22nd of March, which will be Nosh's second part, which is titled Improve Your Bid Response. Okay, so we do look forward to seeing everybody at the next event. I will be able to have all your details via Eventbrite, but if anybody wants me to connect with them separately, you know, put it in the chat, and we'll do so from tomorrow. So thanks very much, Lorna. Thanks very much. Thanks, Noshir, and see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.